Hola a todos, estoy aquí para comunicaros que
My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Samas, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Ready? Play.
Hello guys, so we're gonna do a very quick show, basically just talk about Sinner de Minaur, preview the Alcaraz Ruud match, and also there's gonna be that Nadal video finally getting released later, in fact I think in 41 minutes, so we'll definitely wrap this up by then, and then you're gonna be able to catch this one if you want to. Of course, obviously you don't have to do it right away, but it would be great if you can kind of do a double feature with talking tennis. Why not? Anyway, hi Jack and Sinner de Minaur. Of course, let's just get going. We basically have as an 8-0 head-to-head now for Yannick. It was probably the most predictable result of the ATP finals. So tell me, was there anything special about today in terms of their rivalry, in terms of their match?
Yeah, I kind of agree. It kind of went par for the course. I guess maybe the one thing you could say going into this match and throughout the entirety of the match was that there was almost no chance that de Minaur, for me, was going to win it. Where maybe in the past there's been kind of, de Minaur's maybe flirted with the idea of winning games or breaking Sinner frequently, but today, oh my God, Jesus. I mean, he did get the break, but Sinner's serve was just amazing. It has been amazing the whole season. He's just been growing in confidence. It just felt like he was puffing out his chest so much there was just no chance. It just felt like Sinner was always going to win this one for me.
Yeah, I mean, there was that early break in the first set, but that was not consolidated. And just in general, I think this matchup has been one of the most depressing ones on tour in the past couple of years, because it just feels whatever Alex is going to do, it doesn't really matter. He just doesn't have enough quality on the ball to attack through Sinner. He doesn't have his defense has never really held up against an attacker of this class. Since their first match, really. I mean, even the next gen finals in 2019, that was brutal. I think he took a set in Sofia in 2020 maybe, so that was his chance to get a win. But the last few matches, of course, last year Davis Cup finals, that was especially brutal. That was just a total beatdown in a huge match after all, in the final of the Davis Cup. And of course, then you also get to Rotterdam, and that was actually a pretty close match at the beginning of the season. But that's how we are looking at this. If Alex is able to put in two very close sets, that's already good. That's already a solid result from him in this rivalry. And he was actually peeking out of his mind there for patches. He just wasn't able to pull it off. I don't think today was quite as good from his perspective. Today was maybe more like the median level that he can produce. And yeah, it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough for someone who's this effective, who's this high percentage. Dave says that maybe Alex is not right physically either. I mean, given the state of this group, I guess losing 0-2 to Sinner is not that bad, because you can actually assume that probably all three of them are going to have that. So, it's not the end of the world. Definitely not. And of course, now Alex will play Medvedev, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was just saying, everybody's fighting for the scraps, and de Minaur against Medvedev. You'd back de Minaur against Medvedev potentially after the appearance against Fritz. You imagine Medvedev's maybe a little bit scrambled. I mean, maybe the only asterisk that I would make is that probably de Minaur would prefer to play Medi on a bit of a slower court so that the serve doesn't kind of come into play. I guess we could maybe make that asterisk in terms of their games. But honestly, if you just look on paper, I'm going to back de Minaur. I think Medvedev, when he gets like this and he really gets under his own skin, he plays some of the worst tennis he can play. And That's what I'm expecting. I mean, I don't think he's going to come out completely refreshed. He looked like his whole season had been bothering him. I'm sure it probably was a bit of that. And yeah, it's a shame to see the oldest guy in the group, shaming himself out there like he did. He can do better than that for sure.
Yeah, I mean 6-3 for Medvedev in that rivalry, but that definitely we still consider like other like very defensively oriented players to be problem matchups for him. Then Alex has pushed him in the past many times. So yeah, I think it's obviously a chance for him. Daniil is looking like he wants his season to be over. Jake also mentioning that he doesn't think that Alex is right physically. I mean, when he came back in Antwerp, he definitely was like pushing for it just to make Turin, right? By now, it's actually a pretty long stretch of matches. In a battle right now between Medvedev and the Minaur, it's actually a question who's fitter, and the right answer might be neither. So basically, that's what we're gonna see on Tuesday. And of course, the winners will also face each other in Sinner Fritz, which to me is the most interesting match of this group, really.
Yeah, and even then, like the US Open final, I mean, I remember. I'm sure you feel the same way, or maybe you don't, because maybe it's a little quicker. I don't know. Maybe Fritz can hang into service games just a little bit better. But I remember saying there, still from the back, there's not really much that Sinner's going to feel off put by. Fritz is hitting the ball pretty well though, so do you know what? You never know. I think the performance against Medvedev was pretty polished, despite the fact Medvedev was a bit all over the place. I feel like when Taylor got chances to attack, he took them, and that's been a kind of staple for this season. I definitely feel like he's getting a little bit less loose and kind of knows a bit better when to go for it and when not to go for it. And I think it could be a good match against Sinner. I agree, but I still think Sinner gets the win. I think at least it will be entertaining and probably has the potential to be the most entertaining of all the matches.
Yeah, I think I was talking about depressing rivalries, and this isn't yet a depressing rivalry, but the US Open final certainly belonged in that category, and like everyone knew that it was going to be like this. Everyone knew that was not going to be a match, and it was just how that event went, really, with only one favorite after Alcaraz and Medvedev bombed out. Of course, Medvedev actually to Sinner, but anyway, that's not the most important thing right now. I think yes, quicker court indoors, it just makes it more likely that it's going to be a bit of a serving contest, and that's the only reason why I believe in Taylor. I believe in Taylor not in the sense that I think he'll win, but he can keep it close. 2022, of course, he did very well, and his only ATP Finals appearance to date, also in Turin. And I do have high hopes. I don't know if today's match gives me that. Probably not. Probably it started well before the event. But at least that could be a Sinner match that I will be like excited about watching. Today, Sinner, the Minaur, you pretty much know what's going to happen before you actually open up the match. And that's where we are with this rivalry. I actually saw a very, coming back to this match for a second, I saw an interesting Twitter exchange between Mike James and Mert Ertunga. I think Mert has featured on the channel before. I don't know if Mike James has, but maybe, I don't know. But anyway, they were just talking about the Minaur, and Mert was suggesting that like Alex is not even like even though he's one of the quickest players on tour, he's never actually thinking of like taking these balls on the rise or whatever. And Mike said that like he's taking everything on the rise. He's actually further inside the court than Yannick is. And I guess probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle of this. But it just kind of made me think, there's been a few times definitely when Alex was going to try to, was like trying in this rivalry to take the ball earlier, go to the net, attack Sinner a bit, but he just doesn't have that much on his shots, even on a court like this.
I'd probably side with whoever's argument is the latter. I think that de Minaur does take everything on the rise, and that's the staple of his game. He absorbs pace and he takes time away from the opponents. From positions where maybe other players don't. But there's a difference between maybe your position being a little bit dropped back and then using a kind of step in to really add pace to the ball. But I don't think de Minaur is the best at doing that. There's different ways you can take the ball early and different ways you can take time away from your opponent. But I don't think de Minaur is necessarily the biggest pace adder. So I think it's more about being offensive in that way, maybe injecting a little bit every so often, as opposed to, court position. which I think Minaur does really well. I don't think he has to change that. I don't think he does have to hug the baseline any more than he does. You know, he basically camps there for every matchup he plays. So yeah, I think I don't know if you'd agree with that, Damon, but that's certainly.
Oh, definitely. No, I think this is something that he has actually like improved on in his career. This is like a way of maybe just making sure that some of his limitations don't hit him as hard as they could. I think one of the people in this argument, I don't even remember who it was at this point, but like one of them was also making the case that like he's hitting his shots 10 miles per hour less slower than Yannick. But that's also because of the court position. Like you're not gonna be hitting it that fast when you're on the baseline, when you're taking it on the rise. It just doesn't work like this, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think Alex has done very well in like maximizing his potential, getting his, well, maybe not yet maximizing, but like, yeah, just maximizing that the ability that he has into a game plan that work for him consistently. He just hasn't found one that will work for him consistently against the very top yet. But I mean, we already knew that going into the event. At least he has good head-to-heads against Medvedev and Fritz. So there is definitely still things to like look forward to from his perspective. I think Novak is probably the record, right? I mean, Ferrer was 17-0, I think. So
was it 17? Yeah, I suppose it was.
Nadal, but we have a challenger match where Nadal retired.
Yeah, it doesn't count. It's an ATP head-to-head
because he retired in that match. I'm fine with like, well, mentioning it, but not really caring about it. If it was an actual match that they played, you know, through and through, then I would be like hardcore screaming that Gasquet actually has a win over Nadal. And I think that's also what Gasquet probably was doing, kind of. And I mean, it's very important to mention here that Gael Monfils also has a win over Novak Djokovic in an ITF event in 2004. And that actually was a completed match. So from my perspective, I would say Ferrer is probably the biggest. But yeah, around that, yeah, 18-0, 17-0. I think that's pretty much where we are. We could get to the previews now, I guess, because that's what we had on the screen a second ago, kind of like introduced that we were going to be doing that. So anyway, the first match tomorrow, of course, the day match is Alcaraz against Ruud. This probably looks like the most lopsided match of the John Newcomb group.
Interesting. I don't know. No, I don't think so, actually. I don't know. I think Ruud's maybe got a better chance against some of the other contenders, I would have said. I mean, Ruud's going to be the heavy... I can't even think of the opposite of favourite. That's where my brain's gone. Underdog against pretty much everybody he plays, I think. Maybe Ruud's a bit all over the place. I don't know. I would have said the biggest lopsided head-to-head is going to be Zverev Ruud for me.
Okay.
Zverev's maybe a little better at keeping those backhand exchanges as long as he can. Serves a little bit better than Alcaraz. Yeah, I mean, Alcaraz is still going to be exploiting everything he can against Ruud. I don't know if it'll be the most fascinating matchup for me personally. Any match that... Do you know, I really don't feel high on Ruud at all. I think this is the problem. I'm getting into the territory of really kind of slating the guy when I know he can still play good tennis. So I need to be careful. But at the same time, I'm not expecting him to win any of his matches. It's just not been the great season. He's not the best server anyway, so kind of playing indoors is going to be a little bit tougher for him. Remind me how he did last year, Damien. I'm trying to think, because he did okay, didn't he? He did win a match. Ruud, yeah.
In the ATP finals? I mean, last year he was not in the ATP finals, right?
Was it the year before?
Yeah, 2022 he made the final. He lost to Djokovic, and 2021 he made the semi.
So he did do well.
Both times in Turin he did very well, and this is like the only reason why I'm giving him some benefit of the doubt, and kind of putting him at least on that Rublev the Minaur level, because higher you obviously can't go with how he's been playing the last 2-3 months. So yeah, these previous records in Turin is really the only reason why I have some glimmer of hope that Casper could suddenly turn his form around. But yeah, I mean, it's not looking good, obviously. He lost that aggressive edge again. When we were in the story with John, he was talking about like the losses to Zhang against the US Open, to Fils in Hamburg. He said that one of these guys was like toying with him, and that he was just like, running from corner to corner, and he thought to himself like, I can't do that. This isn't something that I'm going to be able to pull off regularly. And it's actually true. Like, he's not even that good a defender, I think, Ruud. He really wants to be dictating with that heavy forehand. And when he was playing even there, even though he lost to Pedro Martinez in the semis, like, yeah, I could see it. I could see how special of a ball striker he is. And now it's just like all gone again, that confidence. And I saw it fun. Well, let's say, yeah, it's a fun stat, I guess, not from his perspective. But I think until Roland Garros, maybe, he earned like 3,400 points or something like that. And then since, he's earned like 400 or 500. So that's pretty telling.
Jesus, that's rough. I mean, you've got to be winning one or max 2 matches in every single tournament you play, right? I mean, that's very,
I think in his last 8, he's won 1 match, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. So I'm really not expecting much from Casper. Yes, let's have the little asterisk that he's played pretty well at this event in the past, but he's played pretty well at plenty of events in the course of the last kind of 7 or 6 months or so, and he hasn't done so well this time round. So I the only reason I'd say, I mean, I've said it already, but Zverev's serving really well. But I generally think Zverev's a better indoor player than Alcaraz. I think cast your mind back to their match from last year, and it was one of those ones where Alcaraz kind of looked like the better player the longer the rallies went on, but there was just so many service games that just went away like that because Zverev was pinpoint serving down the tee at kind of 220 kilometers an hour consistently. Alcaraz would do the same every so often, but Zverev was just doing it that little bit more all the time, constantly. And it just never really looked like Zverev was going to get that troubled unless something special happened, which of course Alcaraz is capable of doing. But it feels like he has to do something a little bit more special indoors compared to maybe some of the other players that we've got in these groups. In this head-to-head though, maybe not so much. I think plain sailing, Alcaraz gets it done. He doesn't have to do too much to push himself. So I'm sure it'll still be entertaining, but it should be straight sets to Alcaraz, I think.
Yeah, US Open final, I guess, was pretty close between them, but there was also Carlos being pretty fatigued, and 2 years ago and everything. That huge match for both of them for number 1 for the first Slam title. Yeah, Matthew, I know that he built the Turin court, but apparently the Turin court is playing a little slower this year. At least that's what a lot of people are saying already. I'm not saying it's going to be like, that much slower, but in any case, even if Carlos was training on something slightly different, that's even better for him, right? I mean, even taking like these 2-3 points in court pace index, like that's already good. And yeah, it will just make his chances even better. Not that he really needs it against anybody else, but Sinner and Zverev here, I think. Do we have anything else that you wanted us to preview, Mr. Producer? Or should we talk about the Nadal show now? There is apparently one more thing. Gene says that it doesn't look slow. Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be pretty fast. I think that the altitude in Turin is a bit of a factor too. So yeah, I guess Zverev and Rublev. We didn't mention that all that much, I guess. Yeah, I do have some belief in Rublev. I think in just keeping it close, maybe. If there is going to be a match in that group where Rublev does something, I don't know if it's more likely going to be Alcaraz or Zverev. The thing is that Rublev against Alcaraz is like a very... We haven't really seen that rivalry at all. Like, okay, Carlos won last year at the ATP Finals on a super quick court, which is, good for him. Then again, Madrid this year, a win for Andre, but Carlos has that arm issue, can't accelerate through the forehand. And but still, I mean, I guess I would just expect it. I just think that Rublev, out of the players that have like barely gotten into the ATP Finals or were simply out of form, like Medvedev, okay, he was like kind of almost out of form the entire season. But to me, he still has a relatively solid level in patches. And yeah, I guess I could just see him pushing these guys. This is actually a very important match for the whole group as well for me, because if you look at it like tomorrow, if Zverev beats Rublev, then the group will seem kind of done.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And I get what you mean. I think I'm tend to agree with you. Rublev kind of dictates his own fate in a lot of ways, just, by virtue of having probably the biggest forehand on tour. Just kind of goes up and down, and if he's feeling it, then yeah, he totally could. He could run away with this, not run away with it, but he could certainly he could find a way past Zverev. And I'm not inclined to say, like, in the same way that because Ruud's had a bad season, he's going to play badly. Rublev's kind of been the same, but you're right, in patches he's played really well throughout the entirety of the season, and I think he'll be quite up for it in quicker conditions. So yeah, I think this is not 50-50. I still think Zverev's the favourite, because as I say, he can kind of just play kind of his own kind of average tennis, and that's enough indoors sometimes if it's quick enough, because his serve is just so good. And I just remember thinking last year, he did so well just because he was able to place it against every single player he played. So I'm expecting the same. I think it's about 60-40 in the favour of Zverev, but I think if it's 40% to Rublev, that's pretty decent anyway. So that's how I'm feeling, definitely. And I can see that comment about confidence in the chat. Yeah, but again, Rublev's so kind of up and down. It's like maybe he just goes on a little run of points where he hits his forehand well, and that's enough to maybe get a break. And yeah, it's tough to say for sure what's going to happen. By the way, just a side note. I was coaching some kids who are like 8 years old, right? And I'm mentioning all these ATP players to them because they've got to play this game where they take on the persona of a ATP player, right? And whatever player you get, you have like a trait, so you have to have forehands only, or you have to like do one serve or something like that, right? So I tell them the player, and then they guess what the trait is. So I told one of them they were Andre Rublev, and these are 8-year-olds from Scotland who I didn't even think knew who Rublev was. They don't really care. They might know Andy Murray and they might know a few other players, but they know who Rublev is. They're like, oh, what? So basically, what am I meant to like? Yeah, exactly. Am I meant to like hit myself in the legs for the rest of the match? And it's like, is that actually what you think of Rublev as? And yes, it is. That's what kids think of Rublev as. Just like I'm nutcase basically, which is a shame. I still think of the forehand first, but yeah, for everybody else, of course, that's what you see in the media, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, not surprised, especially if you're like a more casual observer or you're simply 8 years old. I mean, obviously, this is the thing that stands out. I mean, even for like hardcore tennis fans right now, most of because Rublev is not doing all that well, most of the talk about him is going to be the reactions and going to be what he's doing on the court, everything besides playing, really. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been taking that into consideration, I suppose. Sure, Zverev's confidence is higher right now, as Dave says, but this is also a shaky subject, Alexander Zverev's confidence in general. So I don't really know if he's just gonna come out and just come out, slap forehands. It happens sometimes. It actually happens pretty often at the ATP finals. Of course, he's won it twice, once in Turin, once in London. But yeah, I mean, if this is actually a relatively exciting match tomorrow. I think a lot of the group stage is going to be lopsided matchups, but this one is quite interesting. We have to remember that before the ankle injury, it was like also a very depressing head-to-head from the perspective of the underdog. Like, it was just as bad as Sinner de Minaur, really. There were so many matches where like he couldn't even break him. He was barely winning points on return. He couldn't hit through him at all. And then, of course, he beat Zverev 3 times in 2023. So that season when the German was coming back. Well, even ATP finals last year, Zverev won. So I don't know. It's an intriguing one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zverev just wins 6-3, 6-4 or whatever. Obviously, that's still probably like the most likely outcome here. Yeah, and I guess with that, we might just take your take on the Nadal show. I know that John kind of brought you in earlier on what it was. Basically, in 18 minutes, you're going to get a premiere of that on the channel. And it's going to be me, John, Vansh, and Carlos talking about 5 points. Kind of taking a very different direction in terms of like what usually people would say, because we're not looking at points that Rafa won. However, we are actually looking at the points that he lost and, points that led to him missing out on some sort of big opportunity. We are also like rating them in terms of importance for his career. And I think in terms of something else, which I don't remember right now. It was pretty fun. It's going to be pretty long as well, so get ready for like, I think, an hour, 40 minutes or something like that of good tennis discussion. But yeah, basically, Jack, the points we had was the Miami final in 2005 against Roger. That one, I don't remember even what. Oh yeah, the point was the Hawkeye one, where Federer hits the ball long. We also had the Australian Open final 2012. That's the obvious one where Djokovic is at the net and Nadal has that down the line corridor with the backhand and misses it. We had a point from the 7-7 game in the Wimbledon 2018 final. We had a point from the Australian Open 2017 final as well, although there we were kind of like unsure what to go for because there were really a few moments. Basically, we just meant that Rafa was 3-1 up in that final against Federer. And had some opportunity, had even a game point, I think, to go 4-2 up. And also the fifth one was from Roland Garros 2021, is it? The very long set that Rafa eventually lost. And we talked about a volley there in the tiebreak, but also at the set point he had before the tiebreak. We weren't sure which one to go for. So basically, does either of these, I know I was just talking for like 1 minute and you probably forgot already what I mentioned first, but does any of this make sense? Which one of these kind of stands out for you in terms of a point that really changed Rafa's legacy in this case for the worse?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to first think about that. I mean, the Miami one, it's Miami. Like, if a Masters tournament out of the 38 goes by the wayside, I'm sure that one was just quite interesting because it's Hawkeye made.
Even though he lost it, he lost 5 finals in Miami eventually, right? He still
nobody at this point, because Novak's got the triple career Masters crown. You're kind of like, well, that record's completely done and dusted. It doesn't really matter if Nadal had Miami under his belt in the end. I kind of get it though. There's people that still say, "Oh, we didn't win Miami, so we can't be the GOAT." I don't really buy into that. Whatever. So yeah, that one maybe doesn't really. There you go, centimeters from ending the GOAT debate. There you go. So yeah, the one that stands out for me, and it's the one that kind of I thought of when John told me about the concept, was probably the Australian Open one in 2012. Because that was probably maybe the most egregious miss. It's like one you would expect him to make in his sleep after such a long rally as well, and then he's got that chance. It's like, so it was probably that shot, because had he made that, I mean, you kind of need to think about what he finally ended with. I guess he did win 2 Australian Open titles, but I still think it's very significant because it was such a huge match, just in terms of records, in terms of length, in terms of what it meant for Novak as well. It might have made a bit of a difference to other finals they played with Novak. I don't know, because it's quite early on in terms of their kind of Grand Slam careers, I guess, or in terms of Novak's Grand Slam legacy, I think is more what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's the one I would go to. I think that's probably the biggest one, because likelihood of him winning the match after he wins that point, pretty high. I would say probably the highest out of most of them, maybe. Maybe the Wimbledon one, I guess. But yeah, because that one's so early on as well, in 2012, you've got so many big matches after that where the pendulum could have swung either way. Yes, it's got to be that one for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, some of the takes you mentioned here, I think definitely did also appear in the show from either me, Carlos, John, or Vansh. We did record it like a month ago, so my memory is a bit fuzzy. But definitely, I think about Miami, we were also on the same page. And then generally Australia, I think, likelihood of winning the match, we rated it pretty highly. As the producer tells us here, that was the other category. So how important was it for his legacy, and also how likely he was going to be to win the match if he actually wins that point in question. I think Australia, we kind of also we're going to, you guys are going to hear us talking about kind of how it was maybe more of a Federer moment than Nadal moment in general. And probably, yes, these Wimbledon and Australian Open titles do stand out. I think what's important to mention as well is that Rafa finally got that second Australian Open 10 years later, which also changes our perspective on that event, I think, from right now. And Wimbledon, he never actually got. So there's that contrast there is also, I think, important to mention. And of course, all of that will be in that show, which is going to premiere like 13 minutes from here. What is Dave talking about here? The point where Djokovic wins the Davis Cup? What's the point when Djokovic wins the Davis Cup?
I think I think
It's like 2010
Dave's
or
thinking about any point, but I assume the premise of the show is points that Nadal played.
But I'm just thinking, which point is that? Like when did Djokovic win the Davis Cup for the first time?
I think 2010, so probably.
So 2010, and then he starts the win streak. Is that what
I think
you
Dave's
mean?
saying that point catapulted Djokovic into GOAT mode, and then from then Nadal couldn't win any slams. But obviously, that's not that's not the premise of the show is points that Nadal played, right? It's not.
Yeah. It had to be a point that Nadal played. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Interesting comment as well. I was just thinking about it. When did that 2011, goating Djokovic originate really? And I never think of the Davis Cup as that moment, to be honest. Probably just more of Australia and going forwards from there. As I think
I get the argument for Miami because. You said it. You pretty much said it. It's like, what feathers did he not have in his cap in the end? And it's the triple Wimbledon, and Miami was the only other one, I guess. So, there's an argument to be made that Miami maybe it was that one. But
yeah, it's a memorable one because you also have the challenge there, right? I mean, the lack of a challenge. We see an actual Hawkeye-ish thing on our screens, but it wasn't yet there yet. And this match was like a major, reason why Hawkeye was introduced. Not much after that. So I guess that's a different kind of like the legacy of tennis thing. And we also actually talked about this with the Wimbledon final, where I proposed to have another category we could rate. Wimbledon semi, of course, because that there I proposed third category because that was a semi-final, not a final, like most of the other matches that we were talking about, where you could also ask how likely is he to win the title if he wins that match. And in the case of the Wimbledon semi-final, I mean, given Kevin Anderson was dead on Sunday, it's probably at 100 out of 100, right? So that is also, I guess, another thing to consider. And we did talk it. We did talk about it on the show for sure. Of course.
I'm gonna make an argument here that this show is maybe not best suited to somebody like Nadal. And there's other candidates I can think of, not just Andy Murray, but there's other candidates I can think of. And the reason I say this is because Nadal's legacy in the end, who really cares if he won a third Wimbledon? I mean, there's going to be the odd GOAT debater that's if he won that third Wimbledon, then Nadal should definitely be declared the best of all time. And you're kind of not really. I mean, the guy's got so many slams under his belt anyway. It's there's these little moments where
I'm not sure about it, Jack, because the thing we have to remember about this is that if Rafa wins one more slam and it's over Novak, then Novak also has one fewer slam.
I hear you. That's a good point.
It changes things. It changes things. A third Wimbledon, a second Australian Open gotten in 2012, and then you of course also have this thing that we were coming back to multiple times in that video about the butterfly effect. And if Rafa wins 2012 Australian Open, then the seedings are different, the rankings are different, and basically nothing later on is going to be the same. So we kind of had to just ignore that whole thing, just pretend that this doesn't exist. But if also doesn't exist, of course, according to Rafa, and indeed he wouldn't be keen. I think this is a show that Rafa himself would be I mean, I'm probably not gonna watch it. Usually I watch all Talking Tennis content, but myself, I'm not interested in this one. But hopefully Rafa will see it and either probably write a comment or something. Rafa, we definitely invite that. Uncle Tony had something to say on the subject, as John says. I think that was probably mentioned as well. Oh, and you even included the clip, so that's great.
It's interesting because for a fact, it's in front of us. It's just against Nadal's legacy and philosophy. So it's just if does exist. If exists. He said it many times. So he won't really care about the past. But from a fan's perspective, it's super interesting. And actually, again, you could look at Federer. That's probably a more painful and quite obvious one, I think. When you think of it.
Yeah.
But
I think that was also mentioned because the approach that Rafa makes on that Wimbledon 7-all point, it's pretty similar to what Roger does on the match point the year after. Of course, it's a backhand one because Rafa is a lefty. That one was a forehand inside in from Roger, but still, like it's pretty much placed the same way, and Novak hits the same shot. So that is also going to be mentioned in the episode. I don't know if you guys are going to enjoy this. I certainly did enjoy recording it. And now that I'm talking about it, I'm kind of remembering some different things from it. And it should be pretty cool. Hopefully, it's also going to be great for you. Show for fans, says our producer. And we've got 7 minutes until the premiere. Do we have anything more to add, or even 6 according to the screen here? Do we have anything more to add on the topic or any other topic you would like?
Not on the ATP, no. The only other thing that's been flying about Twitter is John Wertheim's comments, but that's probably for, I don't know, maybe if you wanted to talk about that quickly, David.
If you want to, I mean, it's pretty interesting that they took him off the air. I was not expecting that. And I might have a bit more of a liberal take on it that I think most would expect from me. Because I think some of the outrage is a little. They took him off the air.
I agree. I'm more. I think cancel culture definitely kind of took hold a little bit here. It's 100% super unprofessional, and the apology was definitely merited. And generally, I just do not know what he was thinking. Very stupid. But it's become quite a. For me, it's become quite kind of genderist, and to be honest, people make comments about male players all the time and stuff as well. I do think a lot of the outrage maybe stems from the fact that it was a female player, and it's obviously a male player.
Definitely.
Making a comment about a female player is probably where a lot of the outrage comes from. So I think that's why a lot of people took it very personally. I don't really blame them, but I think how it all then has went from here is maybe a bit much. It's just one stupid comment. People say stupid stuff. It's not really worth him losing his job.
Yeah, and also Dave is mentioning this, but like, what did John actually say? Like, his comment is very unclear there, right? Like, of course, we know what he meant. He admits to what he meant as well, or like, explains his reasons. But generally there's like cancel culture. The fact that you get that apology from him, and I know it's not perfect. He pretty much gives like 100 reasons why it's not his fault, and then he says sorry. But people are never actually like satisfied with anyone's apology. They're every single time someone posts an apology, they're just saying you're only doing this because you were caught or something. And so what am I supposed to do? Like, not apologize at all? I mean, sometimes you have to react to something that like caused up drama. And especially, I'm very surprised that like after this, he was still taken off the air, because I would assume that this is something he does also to avoid consequences like this. And the reason why I said most people, I think, would be surprised with my reaction to this, and why I have a bit of a liberal take on this, is because usually John Wertheim is one of the people that I just, never say a positive thing about. And I'm still not going to. I just don't think what he did is that horrible. Obviously, it shouldn't happen. It also shouldn't be on the air. So it's like, it's not his fault, 100%, because he didn't know he was on air, and that segment shouldn't have been on air. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of like things said off air that people don't want to, that people don't want others to hear. But at the same time, I just don't think his offense is, well, he should get reprimanded or something, but I don't think it's like suckable, or I don't think he should be getting the outrage that he's getting. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I still think it's just so stupid for him to do it. I just don't really know what he was thinking, but
I don't really understand the thought process behind it, in the sense that like I never even looked at Barbora Krejcikova and thought about her forehead. Like, if you're thinking about her forehead,
if you
like,
said Nadal being bald, like, I kind of get it.
That happens all the time, right? That's many jokes about this, and I think probably even Rafa has joked about it in the past. But like Krejcikova's forehead, I don't know. Is it big? I have no idea. And like if this is what you're thinking of when you're thinking of Barbora Krejcikova, that's a problem with you rather than maybe even you saying something about it. Because yeah, I honestly can't even name a player with a big forehead. I don't know. I guess that's just not something that stands out to me, and rightfully so. You know, I'm glad that it doesn't. But yeah, I think some of the outrage is a little funny. Of course, nothing against Barbora making this post. Like, this is perfectly fine too. Of course, she's just reacting as well, and I think her post is, yeah, it's cool. It's professional, but people have kind of taken it a little maybe too far.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2 minutes until the premiere.
This is us, right? You've got 2 minutes to leave, right, before the premiere starts. So we better go.
Apparently, there's some YouTube thing that maybe will redirect you to that show. Hopefully, it will work. Younger brother here. Yeah, I do look like 5 years younger. I know that, but I don't mind. I like myself both bearded and not bearded. That's fine. Anyway, yeah. Dave is getting cancelled. Thank you guys for this quick show. It actually wasn't that quick, but now if you want to, you can of course go right into that Nadal 5 points that changed tennis history thing. I'm sure you're gonna love it, as it seems very fun even when I'm just talking about this, and of course it was fun recording it as well. Thank you, and see you soon.
See you soon.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis. If there's one match from Rafa's story where you think that was a missed opportunity, there was a big chance. There
have matches,
2
or 3 in Australian Open. No more. We lose the opportunity in Wimbledon against Djokovic in semi-final.
2018.
Then we lose the opportunity, more important because that was semi-final. We lose the opportunity in Australian Open. In the Australian Open 2014, 2012 and 2017.
Yeah.
In 14 because he has an injury against Babrinka that before he had never lose against him. Then with Djokovic and Federer, he had breakup in the 5th.
Yeah.
And 40-30 or the 30-50. I don't remember well. It was a ball very close, goes up. But this is what happened. There was in Roland Garros 2009. Of course, I am sure that he won. He won this tournament when he has no problems in his knee, because at this moment he was the best. He won Australian Open, then he won the tournaments on clay, and he arrived with problems in Roland Garros. For this reason, in my opinion, he lose. But there are others time that maybe he has to lose and he won.